Welcome to USC Rossier's Leadership Month and today's session, Back to School in the Shadow of a Pandemic. Before we begin, I would like to review the process for submitting a question for our panelists. Please type your question in the Q&A box that can be accessed by clicking on the Q&A icon located at the bottom of your screen. We have reserved time towards the end of today's session for your questions and hope to get to as many as possible. We also received a number of questions via the registration form, and I've tried to incorporate as many of them as possible into our structured Q&A at the beginning of the session. If you're planning to share your experience at today's session on social media, we encourage you to include the Leadership Month hashtag #RossierLeads, which appears at the top of the screen. Lastly, please note a recording of this session will be available in the next few days and a link will be sent via email. And now I'd like to introduce the moderator for today's session. Catherine Kawaguchi earned her EdD in 2015 from USC Rossier and currently serves as Superintendent of Sulphur Springs Union School District in Santa Clarita. At this point, I will turn the session over to you, Catherine. Hope you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to our presentation this morning, and we're very excited to be here. I'm very honored to be joined by three individuals. One of them will be coming hopefully in a little bit. We have to, first off, we start with Julie Torletti, who is, if you want to wave, Julie, so they can see you. Julie is a principal at our community school, and she graduated from USC in 2018. With her degree, her doctoral degree. I also have, I'm very honored to be joined with Manny Burciaga, who graduated USC in 2017. He is the principal at Northview High School. And we have some questions to ask you, panelists, and we're just very happy that you're here. And so I'm gonna start. We have Jennifer Burks, hopefully will be joining us in a little bit. She is the Associate Superintendent of Technology and Innovation with Poway Unified School District. So we hope that Jennifer will join in, and when she does, we'll ask her and follow up with some questions. So we're gonna go ahead and get started this morning. And again, we're talking about back to school in the shadow of a pandemic, and we know it's been very challenging for many school districts. So we're looking forward to learning some new information, and maybe we could distill a little bit of a nugget of advice from you two as well of what we're learning as we're navigating to open our schools. So I'm going to start off. We have about 7 questions, panelists, and hopefully we'll get through all of them. And if not, I'll try to get back to the ones that I think are the most important to ask you. So I'm going to start with Julie. And if you wouldn't mind sharing, Julie, for a moment, what curricular model is your school district looking to implement this fall, and why did you choose that model?
Thank you, Kathy. What we are going to be well, first off, none of the decisions my school has been made strictly by one group of people. Everything has been done through a community effort and a task force type of model. So my academic task force, made up of teachers from all of our grade spans, we tried putting together a model that would be, we would be able to use it whether we go hybrid or virtual. And knowing we're starting virtual, at some point we will be going hybrid, we wanted something that could easily go either way. So our virtual model is made up in cohorts where we're basically having A/B days. And in those core cohorts, we're splitting up groups into smaller groups. So at any one time, our teachers should only have about 13 students at a time. The curriculum we're using is everything we've always been using, because luckily all of our curriculum has online components. And while our community has never wanted to go one-to-one, we are now a one-to-one computing school. And so we will be giving every child a Chromebook, and they will have full access to all online subscriptions. And so through that, whether they're in school or at home learning, it should be a cohesive process. So there's not any additional change that the kids will have to go through when the model shifts to a hybrid form.
And Julie, can you just, for our audience, can you tell what grade span your school is?
Absolutely. We are a TK through 8th grade school. We are an independent charter school. So while LAUSD is our authorizer, we have our own board of directors. So every decision we make can really be made at our site level. It's really up to the administration and teachers to put together policies for the board to approve it and then for us to implement it. So it's really a direct route to getting things put in place so we're ready to go by the first day of learning.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Manny. I'm going to turn it over to you. If you want to start off by your grade span as well, would be great as a principal. And then if you could tell about the curricular model your school is looking at to implement and why.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here. When we say, you know, patience is a virtue, it definitely is during a pandemic. Yes, and I'll say I am a 9 through 12 comprehensive high school in a, you know, medium to average district, about 15 miles east of downtown LA. And when I say that, I say how LAUSD has an impact on us. Obviously, LA County, we're in LA County. County has an impact on us, and obviously the Department of Health. So we have to be patient because every single day, something new has come up. We have to be the key word fluid. And I think I'm almost not tired of hearing it, but the word pivot, right? Pivot here, pivot there, you know? But yes, here in our district at Camino Valley, we did a great thing by starting a task force that involved parents, that involved teachers, that involved classified, that involved administrators, and any stakeholder in order to get information where we are and what we will be doing. Now, through all that, where we are as of today, and we're, you know, we're not different than very many, we are starting distance learning full time to start off the year. Now, that doesn't mean that we're doing it the whole year. That doesn't mean we're not saying it, we're doing it for a full semester. We're just going by what the Department of Health and county guidelines say. We've heard what the governor says, and through all that, LA County being on that list, it's very strict, right? Being at a high school, we have questions, right, still, because our union is going to get involved. Yes, we're doing distance learning, but how is that going to look? Okay, how is that going to look in the eye of a parent? How is it going to look in the eye of a teacher? How is it going to look in the eye of an administrator? And that's what we're working on right now. As a matter of fact, negotiations are going on right now as we speak. To see, one of the main questions are, yes, we're going distance learning, but are teachers going to have to come in, or can they work from home? Right? And at the high school level, we have a lot at stake because we have seniors that are going to be getting ready for college, and we want these classes to mean something, and they need to get credit, right? So yes, here at Northview High School, we are doing distance learning until we pivot.
Manny, when schools are allowed to open, have you guys discussed at all? Some of the districts are looking like a 2-1-2 model or an AMP. Have you guys had any of those conversations for a high school level?
Yes, definitely. The task force has been amazing in setting us up for the different options, from a hybrid model of a staggered schedule, where, you know, some kids are coming in on certain days of the week, you know, and then on 2 days a week, okay, depending on, believe it or not, depending on the alphabet, because we are working together with the elementary schools and the middle schools to get families on the same schedule. If we are going to come back at hybrid at some point, and we anticipate that, right? We anticipate coming back in some capacity. But how difficult is it going to be for parents to, hey, my child is at a middle school and my child is at a high school, and I have all three at different levels. Can we try to make it work where if it's the Northview track, the school that feeds into me, and the elementary school that feeds into the middle school that feeds into me, can we get them on the same thing? We're thinking about 2 days a week, with possibly Monday being not a day off, but a day open for intervention, for kids to come and do work with teachers, but it's not a mandatory thing. But once again, that's fluid, and a lot of communication and collaboration has to happen before we can set that in stone.
So we all know that, you know, this last spring when all the schools were, I will say, abruptly closed down and we were all scrambling to figure out life at that point, we've learned a lot. And I think as we reflect back on last spring and we moved to remote learning, what did you learn and how has that impacted your plans for the fall? What would be a lesson you learned from what happened and to where we are moving forward? What would be something that would be that you'd like to share what you've learned through that process? So Julie, what do you think?
Wow, I feel as if I've spent the last 4 months in nothing but reflect. When looking back on what we did last year, I think it's really important. Biggest takeaway is academics. It's really important to focus on academics, but we really need to focus on the social and emotional of where our kids are at. Because as we as adults have abruptly, you know, put a hold on our lives and whatnot, if we're trying, and I think that's one thing as we're creating this new schedule, oops, my video just went out. As we do this, and I'm sorry, something is going on with my internet, so I'll just talk if you can hear me. We realize that having kids in front of the screen for too many hours is not conducive to learning. Rather, smaller periods of time with more instruction during that time, and then like a deeper level of instruction, but less time, so that kids are able to process what they're learning. Kids are able to do other things, get around and move. They're not being held by the constrictions of a normal classroom. So that really was the biggest takeaway in completing our new program, making sure that there's less time in front of the screen, but that time is more meaningful. And also making sure there is time to really pay attention to that social and emotional component of what at OCS, what our program is. It is a combination of both. It's a marriage of social and emotional as well as academic. So making sure we're able to really hold on to that in this new setting.
Thank you. And I'm sure, Manny, you have a lot of lessons from a high school level as well that you've reflected on. And so if you wouldn't mind sharing a couple advice on what you've learned from a high school principal would be great.
I will definitely, yes, we've learned a lot, and we will continue to learn. Here at Covina Valley, we've been very fortunate that we are a one-to-one district. And when I say fortunate, I mean not only for our kids and our community, for them to have the ability to have a computer, a laptop being sent home is just a start, because we all know that the digital divide is real. We all know that not everyone has internet at home. But because we're 4 years into it, we've at least, maybe we're a little bit ahead than most districts that are not one-to-one. Teachers have been trained, okay, right? They've been trained on whether it's Google Classroom, Google Meet, and different ways to engage our students. Now, saying that, one of the most important things I think we've learned, and this is from feedback from teachers that are doing this on a daily basis and that did this, was that this spring was very flexible. It was the hold harmless. I think when we talk about classroom, virtual classroom management, there was kids that would come online and you would just see the logo. How would we take attendance? Are they there or not? We had to come up with something that, hey, if they turned in an assignment, that worked as attendance. If there was communication via email, you know, hey, that helps out. But we all know that if we are going to continue, and we are going to continue this, it's not going to be the same. We have to, and I hate to use that word rigor. Okay, it's going to be rigorous. it's going to be meeting expectations. Teachers are going to come up with syllabi that say what the expectations are, how many minutes of instruction they're going to get on a daily basis, how they're going to be graded. We did the whole credit, no credit situation. We're not going to be doing that anymore. I know that even the high school graduation requirements, we had to take them to board, and the board passed, so they took a year of English off. We had 4 years of English required. Now it went down to 3, and so forth. And so we're not doing that anymore. That was just a temporary solution to obviously a horrible situation that we got caught off guard in the middle of March. So now, what we have learned is we now have been meeting, one or two administrators is dealing with one department throughout the district to make sure that we are meeting and collaborating and talking pacing guides, talking grading, talking curriculum and instruction, and getting in depth with that so we can make sure we set up the expectations on how we open up. And one thing that I will say this, we all talk about doing what's best for students and what we need to do best for our community. Us as leaders need to depoliticize what's going on, because politics gets involved in all this. You should see I'm sure you guys get the emails of, we need to come back to school, and going distance learning is not working, and kids, have a less chance of getting infected and getting this virus. You get all these different things that impede what we're trying to do when we're trying to increase the expectations in these virtual classrooms. I think we just need to be more clear. We need to go ahead and have communication with our families, have communication with our teachers, so we can at least take baby steps and know what we are looking for. Even that first week of school. If our teachers and our families know what the expectation is the first week of school and build that culture, I think we will do a much better job than we did in the spring.
Thank you. And I think I'll just add a few things from a superintendent perspective. And Manny, you touched on this. I really feel that what has really helped districts move forward is communication, and you touched on that. A superintendent, for me, in an elementary district, I work very closely with the high school superintendent because we share families. So I would say the lesson learned is always just make sure you never forget your partner districts and your sister districts, because they're the ones that your parents talk, they compare. And so that is something in our valley, we every week talk together. And so I would say that if there's anything we all need to remember is communication. So thank you, Manny, for bringing that up. I'm going to jump to another question because I think it's really on everybody's minds right now, is the safety protocols. So, in LA County, we just got issued our protocols, and I know, Manny, you're in LA County, and Julie, you're in LA County, correct? And so, but some of our guests might not be, but we know that we have robust protocols. And I guess my question is how is your school navigating the recommended protocols, knowing schools coming around the corner? How are we safely bringing staff and students back to those school sites? What does that look like for you? And what would be the biggest challenges of that? So it's a very loaded questions. I know that, but let's start with you from a high school principal, and then we'll jump to Julie.
Definitely. Right now, or right when this happened, when we cleared everyone out, when I say all the employees, all the students and everyone went home, we figured out, hey, we still need to feed our community, feed our kids, right? So we had our meal service at our high school for the whole district. It was determined, it was deemed that Northview High School had the best setup, and it was centrally located in the city and the district in order for our kids to do this. Well, because of that, we needed classified staff, been in here and so forth. Well, there was a lot of learning situations going on because we all know that everything got shut down, okay? And then it opened up little by little. But I think we've been so patient, and we've worked with our board, we've worked with our district, with our superintendent, because Kathy, we get guided by the superintendent, and you guys are listening to board, you're listening to the county superintendents, you're listening to what's going on and getting all these different things, and then you meet with us, and then 2 days later something different happens, right? So it's difficult. It is a loaded question because it is very difficult. We try to, and I am guilty as charged. My superintendent tells me something and I go for it and I try to get ahead of it. And here I am with plexiglass coming in, and here I am with if you walk out my office right now, you see stickers that have the 6 feet of social distancing, and I got my lead custodian to tell me, hey, this is the high traffic area, we're going to this. Heck, even in my head, I thought, can we do one-way hallways? You know, can we do that? Because you heard that, right? I talked to my lead custodian and my AP in charge of facilities. Can we get, how many kids can we get in our classrooms being social distancing? Way ahead of the game, right? When we know it's so difficult to do. It's going to be so difficult to do. And when we hear from the Department of Health, and when we hear even federally, you know, we hear these things that federally we're hearing, open up schools. In the state of California, you're not opening up schools. But we want to be prepared. We want to be prepared. Any leader, any school site leader wants to be prepared. And yes, I work with a task force. I work with the chief facilities officer, and asking about hand sanitizer, talking about hand washing stations in our around our school, and we'll get on this later. But athletics, okay, athletics is a different ballgame. When I say a different ballgame, we hear, hey, there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We're in phase 1 of athletics, so we can bring in athletes and coaches to meet with coaches, and teachers are going, wait a minute, you can't have kids come to school, but yet you can have athletes come to school, you know, and just meet with their kids with not using any equipment. So we have to go ahead, and you called it, communication is key at all times. Being in touch is with our teachers, and it's already summer. And you and I both know, Julie, communicating with teachers during the summer could be tough. Yes, right? We don't get to get all of them, right? We send an email, and I don't know if everyone got that email. But it's even worse during a pandemic. But it's key. It is key to set up a schedule of what I call transparency. So when I tell my ASB director, can you hold off on the senior photographer coming in the middle of August, like we always do, to take senior pictures? Because I don't know if we can do that. We can do it indoors, but she'll tell me, but athletes can come in. Can we do it outdoors? Let me go ahead and talk to my superintendent. And so constant communication, because safety is the top priority. Safety for not only our students, obviously, but safety for our staff. Because if we cannot get our teachers to feel safe in any capacity, quality curriculum and instruction is not going to follow. Okay, and so I think that is what is key. I need our teachers to feel comfortable either way, and we go from there.
Thank you so much. How about you, Julie?
Well, in addition to what I'm going to presume all campuses are doing, the 6 feet apart, the arrows to make walkways one way and whatnot, we have done all that, and actually that's fallen to me and my admin team walking campus with our measuring tape and our pieces of chalk to X everything out, to X where we want the hand sanitizers. You know, we've done all that. We've gone into the classrooms, we've taken out all furniture and then measured everything out, some sample rooms so we see what 6 feet apart looks like. Because if it's 6 feet apart, we're good. If it's less than that, we need to do all the plexiglass. So with our Bibles, there are back to our reopening folders from everything LA County has put out and LAUSD in California. We've got the room set up. We have the physical setup of everything, but I think like what Manny said, that is less important than the buy-in from our staff and our families. So we've also put out, as recent as last week, we put out surveys to both staff and families. How comfortable would you feel coming back, and what are your biggest concerns? And really addressing things from that point as what will make people most comfortable. Those results are actually what made us decide we were going to go virtual before the governor had said anything. And, you know, then there's the training of how to use a thermometer. Over the summer, I actually was bringing 5 8th graders in at a time to assess for algebra readiness, and having to rearrange, taking furniture outside into a quad area to set up tables so the kids would be able to take assessments outside in a safe environment, taking their temperature to even allow them on campus. And we did learn in the Valley heat, things change. One student had 103. Well, she didn't, she was normal, but understanding the simple tasks such as taking a temperature. And then from a scheduling point, how do we stagger dismissal and start times to reflect our playground? Because we have to decide, where are the students going to line up? Which gate will they be coming in from? Our lower grades are on one side of the campus, so then having them come in through gates on that side versus our middle school, which there are gates on a different part of the campus. And trying to figure out the logistics of traffic patterns and families with kids in all different grade spans. So that was really, I think, the logistics part that we found the most challenging, was figuring out where the kids would be at what part of the day and how to safely get them from point A to point B without cross traffic, without touching each other, with there being that 6 feet apart, and doing that in a way that the parents would be able to drop off the kids in a controlled way, but not a frustrating way, because trying to get everybody out, traffic jams happen. So then we also have to keep into account our neighborhood and our neighbors and those traffic patterns. So I would say, as far as how everything is set up, I think we got that. We've been given clear guidelines, but what that looks in reality, and you know, like I said, it took us walking the campus many times with our measuring tape and our chalk to figure out, you know, to get one class to line up, that means we're going 156 feet out. Not everybody has 156 feet to line up one class. So little things like that. And one thing I think actually that struck me the most about the safety was how much time I spent looking at the diameter of a circle, because my 5th through 8th graders could stand on a dot, but my younger kids, standing on a dot is difficult. So if we want them to sit in a circle, what is the appropriate number, which by the way, we figured was 6 1/4 inch, that they would have the space, they could fidget, but we're still able to safely keep everyone 6 feet apart and not running out of space. And I gotta be honest, I never in my life thought I would have gone through as much education as I've gone through for it to come down to the circumference of a circle. So I'd say, why will I ever need to know this? You can let them know why.
Good points. I think I just wanted to add, from a superintendent perspective, one of the biggest challenges that I know superintendents are having with the safety is really the students with special needs. So in my valley, my school district, we actually service all the medical fragile unit for the entire valley. So we have 5 schools that feed into ours, 5 districts that feed into ours. So I would say that one of the things that is a real message, even as a leader, as a principal, as a superintendent, being really clear with your union and your parents about what are the safety protocols you are putting in place so that people feel safe to come back. And so that is something that I've taken a lot of heart to, because I have, just as you do too, aides that are literally on children that have to be there to support them, because we have children on oxygen tanks, and we have G-tube feedings, and you know, we have all that going on, almost a medical situation. How do you make sure? So that is something that I think, as a face of the superintendent, communicating that, making sure that everybody knows what's going on, and being really thoughtful. And I think, Manny, you brought up a very good point. The task forces are huge. I've kept a safety task force as well in my district. It has union, it has parents, it has management on there, really keeping people informed. And it's probably been the greatest asset to our district, but also a challenge, making sure we're navigating. So it's both. So thank you both. That was a very great question. And I think we're all struggling with it, and we're all going to learn from it for sure. I have another question for you that I think is also important, and it's something that both private and public schools, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, but how has the pandemic impacted your ability to recruit and retain students in your school? And have you implemented any strategies to try to minimize the impact moving forward? So maybe if you're seeing any decline, have you done anything? Or are you increasing and you don't know? I mean, that's a great problem to have. So Julie, I'm going to start with you on that one. What have you seen for the ability to recruit and retrain? Because you are a charter school, so it's interesting to hear your perspective and what you're going through.
And as you said, as a charter, our enrollment process is very much detailed. And I can say because of the enrollment process, we are all a lottery school. The only way to get into my school is through a lottery. And the deadline to be put into the lottery was March 1st. So before we even closed, we already had all the applicants in the system. And then we held the lottery as normal. We do have wait lists because of that. And I can say that I'm not aware right now if there was a negative impact. I know the bigger question from my families is if they leave because they don't want to go, they want to go more towards a homeschooling than a virtual online program, will we reserve their space? Because under the charter and under the law in which we're governed, once they leave, they forfeit their spot. So that is really the biggest question my families are having, is what happens if they leave to go to a different format and they want to come back? And that's something that we're working with our attorneys, we're working with LAUSD to see, because I can't go against what my charter says. As far as the new parents, the biggest question is kindergarten, because we do start in kinder. What is kinder going to look like from that virtual standpoint? How do we build community from that virtual standpoint? So in a sense, we are lucky that all of our recruitment happened prior to that deadline. And so much of our recruitment is through word of mouth. I can honestly say we haven't started discussing what the recruitment will look like for next year. Where at this point we usually already have. I think we're just really focusing on getting school started and then knowing we have from August to March to really start that recruitment. So ours is really, the discussion is really more focused on how to build this community with our new students who aren't going to fully be able to experience the OCS way and the way we do things.
Very good, thank you. I want to welcome you, Jennifer Burks, to our panel here, and we're going to continue the question. I'll come right back to you. Thank you, Jennifer, for being here. Appreciate it. Manny, we're going to go to you next. How has the pandemic affected your recruit and retain of students for your school? And what are the strategies you're coming up with?
Well, you know what? It's I mentioned this before, that we are a one-to-one district, and this is the 4th year into this, and that is something that we market. We market that we as schools, as teachers, as kids, we know how to navigate on a laptop being away from the classroom. And this was happening before the pandemic hit. Google Classroom lessons were being seen and recorded by teachers and students way before this. So I think the key message that we give to the community is comfort and flexibility. Comfort that we know what we're doing, comfort that we're confident that learning is going to happen, even though we all know that in-person learning is the way to do this. And before I talk too much, I say this: we always prepare for the worst case scenario. We prepare for active shooters. We prepare for earthquakes. When it's an active shooter situation, it's just one school and that's it, right? When we prepare for an earthquake, it's the whole region. Well, preparing for a global pandemic, we've never prepared for this. But the only good thing is we're all in this. We're all going through this. So all we have to do to recruit and to market and to retain our students is to show our communities that we know what we're doing. We're adept at technology. We can go ahead and facilitate and close that digital divide that's out there by preparing to get hotspots, by doing whatever is possible for our kids. And at the same time, and I'll say this personally here at Northview High School, we have fantastic career technical education pathways. So the days of just, I'm going to take an elective are gone here. We have pathways that are set and that we are really good at. And one of them is journalism and broadcast and film editing. So going through all this, being a high school and knowing the importance of sports, we are getting together with people to be able to stream sports and athletic events when they do open up in January. We know that they are going to open. We know that eventually parents and fans are going to be able to come, but in the beginning, maybe for a year or two, it's not going to be a situation where, hey, everybody wants to come. So we're going to facilitate that for the community and for our kids and our teachers to open up a sports broadcasting branch of our journalism and broadcasting. So I guess what are we doing is we are getting better at what our strengths are, getting stronger. And also we have to think outside the box. We have to think outside the box. And I think that's one of the main reasons why Northview in particular, we're doing a good job of retaining our kids, and other kids are interested in coming just because of the one-to-one and the technology capacities that we do have.
Excellent, thank you. Jennifer, I'm gonna ask you the same question. You're the Associate Superintendent of Technology and Innovation, so I'm excited to actually hear what Poway Unified School District could be doing in terms of the retention and keeping your students within your school district. What do you have to share with us on this?
Similar to what was just shared, we have been doing a lot of work over the past few years around the purposeful integration of technology. So we have really worked to develop programs and initiatives. One of those is personalized professional development in the classroom with technology and innovation coaches, where the coaches actually partner with the teacher in the class, with the students, with the technology that's necessary to provide that in-class embedded coaching for our teachers, to really build that self-efficacy and capacity amongst the teachers so they can continue that when the coaches then do leave and they exit out of that cohort or that model that we've implemented. We've done a lot of work with the students. We've increased our capacity for different technology resources, instructional tools, and we built those systematic platforms so that we're all on the same page. We're all using the same learning management system and so forth. So we have that continuity. We've also implemented a lot of online supports for teachers and also our classified staff to build capacity. We've called those tech cafes. We stream them live. They are also archived. The staff are also able to come in person to some of those. So really building that collective whole has been an important component. I think what we've also been able to support during distance learning is family support as needed. So having the technical support as families encounter those challenges that may occur. We've distributed laptops and, Chromebooks to our students as needed. We've worked with internet connectivity issues such as hotspots, low-cost internet to be able to support our families. Obviously, I'm sure my other colleagues have shared around continuing with the meal services and everything that we can do to support our families in any way possible. We also have a home and independent study program that's been available in our district for the past few years. And we're seeing that program for both our elementary and our high schools significantly grow, especially the interest for next year and what we're doing to be able to both offer on-campus options to return when it's allowed, as well as the virtual learning option, which we're calling our Virtual Learning Academy for any of our families, but also being able to offer the homeschool and the independent study. So really helping to maintain and support, as well as really working hard to support our students in special ed, our EL students, any students that really need those extra supports. How can we have those touch points to reach out to them to make sure they feel connected and all students feel connected with their schools and their teachers.
Thank you. And I know that our host is going to be coming on, Matt, in just a moment. I want to ask this one question, though, because I think it's really key. I'm going to tweak it just a little bit, though. I mentioned a little bit, and Jennifer, you did as well, about special education and students with special needs. What a challenge we're all facing with this. And we know that having them in our schools is the best way, and we really want to be able to support them. But we are all, as we know right now, moving to online.
I think Julie's reading email or something. She's making a funny face.
Oh, I think somebody's on. So I'm just wondering if you guys could just please, just for a moment, think about your students with special needs and what did you learn from last spring, and what are you going to do differently as you open the fall with your population, and maybe hone in on one certain population, because we know we have mild to moderate to severe, but maybe you could think for a moment about what is one of the populations that you've learned that you might do differently, that you could give us some advice on as we open up. And so Manny, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Okay, great question. And I'm sure it's multi-tiered, but I will start that we learned that the IEP process, okay, can be done by video, okay? And in some cases, these video conferences have been better, right? So we've learned a lot, and I think getting comfortable with our families in that sense has been enabling, has been making them feel empowered when we're doing this. So that has been a positive thing. Now, we know that instructional needs are easier to meet during this time like this, but trying to meet the needs of designated instructional service kids, the DIS kids, right? The ones that disorder of language, speech, or hearing, that's difficult to do. And I think that is where we as a school are focusing and prioritizing on meeting with those families right when the school year begins. That's going to be the priority, because it's already tough for families to know what's going on when school is open. And once again, just making our families feel that comfort and that flexibility is something that we need to do. So yes, we've already set up our counseling team. Specifically, I have one counselor that's in charge of all special ed students, and one AP, and then we have our school psychologist, and then obviously our district people that have tackled and tackled that project to be able to prioritize that first, because in the beginning when we did this and we were going online learning, some of our kids couldn't use a laptop, right? And so here we are delivering packets of work of different things that we're doing straight to their doorstep. And so, yes, we want to make sure we prioritize every single kid, but these specific groups are what we are going to target right when school starts. And now we're talking, it's a couple of weeks away, right?
Thank you. How about you, Jennifer, on that one? What is your district doing with in terms of special education?
You know, it's a great question. You know, we were fortunate to be able to open for a few weeks with a blended learning model for our extended school year for our special education students. And that was amazing to have students back on campus part-time working with our families. We know that we had to transition that back to a virtual model, but we know that we can do this when schools open. I think one of the other pieces that we're exploring is the waiver process. And as the waiver process, as it was shared in the recent guidelines, more information is coming on that, but it is definitely something that we're interested in exploring for our special ed as a learning hub to be able to bring students back. I echo what Manny said about the IEPs going online. That actually was highly successful. Families felt supported. It was really, really successful. And so I think, you know, how can we support our families looking at putting, you know, speech online and the teleconferencing and having those additional supports. I think we continue to look for best practices, how we can do that, leverage on our, you know, partners and our colleagues around how they're supporting special education students and offering some of those supports. If it's, you know, teacher guided lessons with RIAs being able to do small breakout sessions with students and having those supports. But we're really hoping that we'll have the possibility to bring students back in small groups in those hubs as well. And so we're looking at just finalizing some supplementary resources to bring, you know, how we can support special ed students in light of virtual learning and learn from what we were doing in the spring. And then you know, enhance on that, what was going well, what challenges did we have, and improve upon that in every way possible, as well as getting stakeholder feedback from our families, such as our community advisory council and group that meets regularly, just getting all of that information and feedback and improving on that to support all of our students and especially our students with disabilities.
Thank you. Julie, how about you? Now, do you service children with special needs on your campus? How does that work for your charter school?
Well, as a charter, we are still held to IDEA and to everything as a public school, as all public schools are held to. So, but we don't do special day classes. We believe in the inclusive model. So regardless of a child's challenges, we have general education classes. Our school does run almost an 18% Sped rate, and the diagnoses across the board. So we do have support in the classroom to help the teachers. And what we're doing, what we've done in the spring and moving forward, we have had our resource teachers actually have deep, meaningful conversations with the parents of our students to find out how their learning has gone during the spring and whatnot. Set up times where they can work one-on-one with the students that is convenient for the parents, yet doesn't interfere with the scheduled class times or the scheduled Zoom sessions. We have our support providers, such as speech and language and physical therapy and adaptive PE. We have them set up conference calls, and they really will stay on the phone. They will stay in a Zoom session with the child and going over and providing the services as deemed appropriate and the services as required by law. So we're going to keep moving forward with that. We also, over the summer, we purchased a program that to help with some academics for some of our kids, especially our Sped kids that we saw were falling behind. And we dedicated a staff person specifically to work with our kids over the summer to really try and give them the confidence and the foundational tools they may have missed in the spring. So we will be continuing to do with that. We have actually really fallen in love with the phone conference IEPs because we found that it really keeps them much shorter and that we get to the point. There's less going off and talking about other things, but really staying focused. So we found those to be really beneficial. And we do a lot of IEPs, and because we're general ed, it involves our general ed staff as well. So it's been very helpful in being able to schedule who is supposed to be where. We plan on doing that. Right now, what we're actually doing for our SPED kids is compiling a list of what manipulatives they use and creating packets, sending those all home so that in the fall, they'll have all the manipulatives they need. If they have special seating, we're sending the chairs home, but things to assist them the way they'd have them in the classroom to make sure they have them at home. And really working and counseling the parents, because it is definitely a challenge on the parents to work with their kids. I mean, for all parents, but really counseling our special education parents on tools or techniques that we have found to really help motivate their child or really help their child in moving forward. And we will be continuing with all of that in the fall.
Thank you. We have a few questions that have come in from our participants, and I want to just take a moment, try to get through some of these. The first one that I'm looking at is an interesting question. So it says, with distance learning, students are working more independently. Thus, they will be needing help outside of traditional school hours and even more so. Are teachers in general open to extending their days beyond the traditional hours? Or do we need to start thinking of bringing extra manpower in the form of more teachers, credentials, assistants, etc.? It's a great question. So what, Manny, has happened at the high school level? What you probably, I think you have a lot to add on this question.
Well, you know what? We've been in touch with not only the teachers union, but with the community and what the needs are. One thing that we hear, we sent out different surveys and questionnaires, right? Specifically, first, sending it out to parents. If we opened up, are you willing to come back, right? And so same thing with teachers. Do you feel safe coming back, and so forth? And what we're hearing, I mean, right now, of course, it doesn't help what goes on in the media. It doesn't come, it doesn't help that the CTA will send something out that maybe teachers do not feel comfortable coming back on campus. So to answer your question, I think it depends on every union, that you have in your district, and we all have different relationships with them. We have a very good relationship with our union. We listen, we adjust. We do things, I think, that what's going to be best for everyone. So when you say, do they want to come back? They want to come back and feel safe. That's the answer. Whether it's in person, hybrid, or all online, they want to teach, right? And that is number one. That is the first step for everyone. Hey, they want to teach. But then again, number two is we have a dire budget situation right now. So yes, trying to get manpower. Right now, I am fighting as a site administrator, fighting for FTE, fighting for these sections, right? Fighting for my young teachers where they're not tenured. I need them. When I had kids last year in person, the numbers were there, but now we're concerned, are the numbers going to be there when the school year starts? And so right now, our teachers are starting off as long-term substitutes that aren't tenured. And so I think it's different at every site, in every district. Our teachers want to come back in a safe manner, yes, but our budget, the state budget, we're in a tough situation for the next 3 years, and I think you guys can attest to that. So I hope I answered that correctly.
Thank you. I'm going to go to another question. Another question that I think is a great question too, that we're all dealing with, no matter what your role is in your school district. How can students access counselors or support if they're experiencing abuse, neglect at home? It's a great question. And I don't know, Jennifer, if you could answer that question from Poway Unified School District?
Sure. I think, you know, all of our schools are equipped with the supports. Social emotional learning is critical. And so, you know, with the teachers who know their students, who had opportunities to be with them last year, even though they ended the year virtually, you know, teachers were able to still have those connections with students. And so that way, if there was any concern, any questions, if they felt that students had reached out to them, they had somebody to connect them to. One of our most critical pieces that we felt important to implement was those check-ins with our students, you know, making sure that there were time to check in. If it was as a group to do a check-in and then follow up, if it was small group during office hours or small group lessons, if it was individually, you know, our teachers had a pulse on the students. And that is something for us moving forward for next year. You know, learn from your successes is also learn from your, you know, challenges that we faced, is that FaceTime with students, even if it is over, you know, video conferencing, is critical. And so that's something being implemented next year is really ensuring that each teacher each day has face-to-face time with their students. Whole class, small group, individually, a variety of those options to be able to connect. And to be able to have what we implemented in Poway was a mindful moment, just a moment to stop and reflect and think, and to have that moment before we start whatever learning is going to be taking place. We have systems in place for students during, you know, at any time that they need to reach out. We have hotlines, we have connections with the teachers, we have a variety of ways that students and families can reach out if there's any sort of need to do that. And we know that our teachers and our counselors are amazing to make sure that, you know, student safety and their feeling, you know, supported is at the forefront of everything that we're doing. And that's why those teacher connections and that teacher touch point in the sense of connecting with their students is so critical. So we continue to build upon that. We also have in our district student support specialists, which are actually classified staff who connect with students, who build those connections, who know students that might need some extra support, so be able to reach out to them as well. So we've layered that in many ways, you know, as well as all of the trauma-informed practices that are in place that, you know, we continue to move forward with. And I think we've done a really nice job. I also think we have ways that we can improve upon that moving into distance and virtual learning next year.
Thank you so much. I have another question. How are you bringing recreational programming to your district or school? After school programming, what do you intend to implement this fall, if at all? So this is, you know, after school program, or maybe you've got people coming in that you've been used to delivering your arts program or whatever. What does that look like? I'm going to go to you, Julie, and see, do you have any of these in your school?
As far as for after school, we don't. But what we're doing as far as during the school day is we do have a music program, and we're figuring out how that music program will come into play on a weekly basis or a daily basis for classes to make sure the students still have that part of their education. We also are looking at using one of our classified personnel, one of our paraprofessionals, to actually hold playgroup. So whether it's calling a group of kids together and just doing Legos online, but something where there's that social aspect that gets lost in the academic world of education being taught online. So we're really trying to focus on how to get the concept of play brought in across all grades and how to really get that component there. We do believe that component, that play, is where a lot of really rich conversation takes place. So also going back to your last question regarding if kids are in crisis, a lot of times we find this out when they're playing with somebody that they're not feeling is an authority, but rather they're just talking and things come out. So as part of our social and emotional foundation, we find it really important to offer that non-academic time with an adult that is supervised, but that's also where so much information comes out and helps us go along with our trauma-informed instruction, but really also building that trust. The kids might not have an adult at home they trust. So being able to give them someone from school is so vitally important. And then we have technology, and we're trying to see how that's going to play out into the upcoming year. Over the spring, we were able to continue with after school. We do have like guitar lessons and other music classes, and seeing how that's going to play in coming the fall. And that's actually something on Monday we'll really be going more in depth to actually schedule in to our school schedules.
Thank you. So this next one is a little bit, it's a question at the end, but I want you to listen to the first part, okay? So our participant stated, I wonder why we need to have a grading system at all. One of the reasons why distance learning does not work in the regular instructional setting is because students have to be trained to work for a grade. This is ambiguous when the intent of online learning is to learn. Therefore, why couldn't districts be transformative and take a look at other measures of achievement levels? For example, in the UK moved toward feedback protocols, success criteria for projects. This would be more beneficial alternative to grading. And we know grading is a hot topic. I mean, we could talk all day on grading. What are some thoughts on this? Manny, I'm going to jump to you as a high school level on this too, because I think this is interesting. I'm sure you've been asked about the grading and the accountability and holding students and what we learned and now moving forward. So Manny, go ahead and try to.
And you're giving me all the tough questions here. Very, very interesting subject, but I will say this. If there is a time for there to be a transition of progress to getting somewhere in the terms of grading and education across the board, it is now. I will say that Northview High School was in the midst of being an avid demonstration school. And one of the main obstacles and hurdles that we have had is, what can we tell our teachers about grading? We were having great discussion right before everything shut down about not giving a 0, right? And so we're taking those baby steps. Why give a 0 to a kid where you can give a 50% and that's still an F? Give a 0, unions get involved, you can't touch my grade book, and so forth. But we were getting there. Another thing that this has caused, I mean, you hear what's going on with colleges and universities with the SAT, right? We're hearing things about even state exams. So I think, to answer the question, obviously this pandemic has caused a transformation of where education is headed, and grading and assessment is going to be a huge part of this. So if we're going to get anything positive out of this, and I think we should be excited about this, is that. And so baby steps, little by little, district by district, and we'll see where this goes. But yes, I do agree with there needs to be a change.
And I just want to add too, as a superintendent, this hits superintendents really hard, this question. So I thought it's a great question. Parents want accountability. Parents want to know, especially you have older children, the 6th graders, 7th, 8th, 9th, how do I keep my child engaged? So it's a great question. I think it's a challenge. And I saw Julie, your hand up. Do you want to add to that?
I do. I'm laughing about this because grading is what's keeping me up at night right now. My academic task force, our big focus right now is grading. If we look at this pandemic as a gift to transform education, as you said, we hopefully will never be given this opportunity, as weird as that sounds, again. But are we willing to take these big steps, these grand gestures that we will not be able to do again? And one of them is we're discussing switching over to a standards-based grade rather than a point-based grade. And we're having some amazing conversations about it and researching it really in depth and seeing under this model, we could really focus on a project-based learning type and really focus on not the process, but really making sure the kids are growing from the process. and they're not being penalized. The point system is really starting to sound archaic and punitive, so to speak. And so we're really trying to figure out, the question we keep asking each other is, you know, the Band-Aid, do you pull it, do you rip it off at once, or do you slowly do it? And the thoughts from my K-6 teachers is very different than my 7th and 8th grade teachers, and figuring out how do we do this so there's complete buy-in. But at the end of the day, it has to be about what is best for the child and what is the purpose of grading. If the purpose of grading is for us to see the growth and the knowledge and the mastery, then maybe a point system is a little arbitrary. And so it's really, we're really having this because this is going to be a monumental decision and a complete change to the way our school's been doing things for 15 years. So I know it is on everyone's mind, and I have to say, it's really an amazing opportunity that I don't want to let pass up. This has to be the silver lining in this cloud that we've been given.
Thank you. We have one question I want to ask, and Jennifer, I'm going to throw this question to you. It's an interesting one, and if anybody else wants to chime in, please do. And I'm also watching our time, Matt, so I want you to know I'm watching it. When it comes to hybrid and online K-12 public education, how might expectations for in-local parenthesis duties that educators owe to their students change? It's a very interesting question. Will these duties cease to exist or become even more challenging now that the education will occur primarily in students when students are outside of school, so when they're in their home? Because, you know, we're the caregivers when they're in our hands. What happens with that? I don't know, Jennifer, that's a loaded question. Do you feel okay on that one?
So I just want to paraphrase that back to make sure I heard the various components. As we're kind of in a hybrid online K-12 model, is it really looking at the role of the parent and as the students are at home during—
Yes, and who's in charge and how that works? Yeah.
I think that's a great question. And as a parent of 2 students, that's hard, you know, navigating all of those roles. So I think one of the things that we did learn from the spring during kind of that emergency distance learning period, and this is, what does that really look like? And how do we do virtual learning 2.0 with purpose to ensure that that doesn't fall upon the parent? Because, you know, we did hear, and I had my own struggles of, you know, being the parent and telling my high schooler in math, please go look at YouTube because I don't remember sine and cosine. And also, you know, understanding the perspective of a family who has a child with special needs. And so, you know, that is a challenge. And I think we really have been thoughtful on how can we ensure an in-class experience with the teacher that is different from how we rolled out in the spring, and separating that, but also how we also can partner. And we look at that 3-legged stool of the student, the teacher, and the parent in collaboration together and unity together to be able to offer those resources and support. So we partner with our families, but we also need to make sure that, you know, the teacher is the teacher and it doesn't affect the relations in the home. So really doing that with purpose and having a plan, but also ensuring that that plan doesn't mean too much screen time for kids, or class in person and online. It has to look and feel a little bit different. It is, you know, you can't ask students to be online all day as a typical class. So we have to look at that. And so that independent time, we've looked at purchasing some personalized adaptive curriculum to help with some of those supports, some of those gaps in students to really offer that. And then I think the direct explicit instruction along with small groups, along with office hours to address those needs, along with the possibility of paraprofessionals and IAs doing, you know, separate supports in addition for our students if they need AL support, if they need just additional support, being able to add a layer in, having those daily touch points with students and that daily contact with students, being able to post online in case a student at that time can't be in the class because there's other families at home, being able to support with the technology, the internet support, all of those pieces. But I do think it does pose a challenge. And, you know, we really want to partner. We're also looking at some family academies, which we didn't offer. How do we make sure that the parents are comfortable, especially with younger age children? We know that, you know, a lot of students can get on and get onto their learning management system and go. What do we do for the students that aren't quite as motivated, that aren't as intrinsically engaged in that process to jump on? What do we do with kids that aren't logging on at all? How do we be a resource and a support? How do we help at that younger age level so that parents know when you start talking instructional tools to them, it's just a lot of jargon. How do we help them feel comfortable? And then just as we build student capacity slowly as far as integrating something new in technology and building those structures and supports, it's about doing that as well. Not jumping in and expecting, you know, one outcome at the beginning, but know that it takes, we've got to build that and chunk it and scaffold it for, you know, our families and our students. So I'm sure our colleagues have other responses, but.
Yeah, well, we're out of time and I apologize for that because boy, we could keep talking and talking about this for sure. But I want to just thank our panelists this afternoon for being part of this. And I just say, I hope that we continue to reach out to each other because we need to work together as a village to make this happen because we're all learning how to do education again. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Thank you. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our panelists and moderator for providing insight into how their schools and districts are preparing for the fall. There's definitely a lot of challenges, but we also learned there's some unique opportunities to rethink some things. So thank you again for sharing those insights. As I mentioned earlier, a recording of today's webinar will be sent out in the next few days, as well as contact information for our speakers. When you close out of today's webinar, a short survey will appear. Please take a moment to provide feedback on today's session and share your ideas for future virtual programs. Thank you for attending. We hope you will attend one of the remaining Leadership Month sessions as we are coming to a close next week. Have a great day, have a great weekend, and fight on.